let's now break down the monad madness, right?
Sure.
I think the TLDR of monad should be parallelized blockchain, not parallelized blockchains, as you rightfully tweeted,
Yeah.
right? But let's like explain monad to everyone like with 5.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so Monad is a new EVM blockchain, an L1, and we're focused on hyper performance. So it's optimized through pipelining on various parts of the stack. We do things like parallelized execution, which I think is what most people are familiar with.
Right.
But alongside that, there's also asynchronous execution, and BFT is similar in function to many other BFT style algorithms. The difference being that we're working towards really optimizing the communication between various nodes around the world, hopefully making it far more efficient to support the 10,000 transactions per second that we're targeting.
Right. I think like the first time when we met, there was an interesting analogy that you used about like the Windows XP user and like the entire experience and people still sticking to it, right?
Yes.
Can you like dive into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was so that was from the perspective of like application building and why is there a need for another L1, which was a question that we got a lot in the early days of like why are we building another L1? There's so many out there. There's now L2s, sometimes L3s.
Yeah.
And the answer to that is like building a fundamentally better platform, the same way that Windows 95 was around for many, many years, and it worked just fine. You could run, Word, Excel on it, various other things. I think Minesweeper, which is fun. But then when XP came about, that was like a new era of applications. Suddenly, the software that we had for Microsoft Office Suite got so much better. We then saw like in desktop games, like the pinball machine game, like that would never have been possible on Windows 95.
Right.
So in a similar vein, the unlocks that the Monad blockchain brings will hopefully also usher in a new type of application diversity.
Right. I've also heard that you keep everyone in check in the Monad team, right? And there's a very strict Slack hygiene, right? Where you can't use certain words. Right? Like, what is all that about?
Well, I think if anything, it's just trying to promote a culture of positivity. So Slack hygiene, I think, is always very good to maintain organization and cleanliness. So the team has been growing a lot. And with a growing team, more messages on Slack.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of organization.
Nice. So now you're at a unique stage where your testnet is about to go live and you'll have to attract even more builders to build on your ecosystem, right? What is the pitch for builders? Why should they build on Monad other than the tech stack, right? Tech stack is beautiful, like we've heard about it. What other ecosystem support can we expect from the Monad Lab or Monad Foundation or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so there's various types of support. I think Monad Madness is actually a great example of it, connecting builders who are in need of funding, who are at a stage where their product is very well defined and they're just looking for support to go to market. So that's like one aspect. We have a designer who has actually been working with a number of teams to give individual feedback about their UI, the user friendliness of their application, and even basic things such as like what color scheme to use, or like how do you use buttons versus like drop downs and this and that. Otherwise, the team, I'd say in general, is extremely friendly and welcoming. We're always eager to chat with new project teams, and always open to provide feedback and guidance to whatever extent we can.
How did you all come up with the name Monad?
So it was interestingly the working name of the project, even in its early days. There was a time where we were thinking of like, let's try to find an actual name for it. And so we spent maybe a week or so of just listing out like all of these like optional names, but none of them panned out. Like they were either too cringe or like too basic or already taken. Monad is interesting because it is fundamentally it comes from a functional programming term. But then beyond that, there's also the philosophical definition of being basically like a singularity, like a basic unit, so to speak, a fundamental unit. So it just made a lot of sense from both its meaning, it's a little nerd snipey, and at the same time, it's easy to spell. across any language, like the likelihood that you'll get monad right on the first try is pretty high. So we were also thinking about SEO to some extent. Yeah.
All right. One thing that I really loved was the TPS concept of how you guys have been calculating it, right? So Monad is boasting of a 10,000 TPS, and there's a fundamental difference between how some blockchains calculate TPS versus how you're using like the historical data, right? Can you like expand more on that?
Yeah, totally. It all comes down to the fungibility, or rather lack of fungibility with transactions. So a transfer is the simplest form of a transaction, but like all transfers are a transaction. Not all transactions are a transfer.
Right.
So these days, there's like very, very complex transactions that are on the blockchain, far greater than like a typical transfer. So to say that, like, I mean, let's just give a unit to it. Let's say a transfer is worth like a 1 point or something along those lines. But other transactions can be worth 10 points. So to say that like one transaction is equal to 10 I think you kind of understand the nuance here. Yeah. So basically, the way that we're doing benchmarking is by using real transactions on Ethereum, and that emulate essentially real use cases because it is live. Instead of just using transfers as a proxy for trying to ramp up the TPS number artificially, the idea is to use real world data. And so that's where replaying Ethereum history comes into play. And the reason why we can do that is because Monad is fully EVM compatible.
Right. Now that like when you have like an internal DevNet that's live and everything, right, and a testnet is coming out, are there any specific areas of dApps that you're focusing on, or that's your like focus internally, that this is the market share, this is the domain that we need to capture first, and then we can like grow from there?
Yeah, I'm most excited about consumer apps, to be honest.
Okay.
I think there's like a new wave of applications that we can and will see, especially with increased design space, with more TPS, for example, and just like more computing power. So yeah, consumer apps.
Okay. Are there any interesting ideas that have already been building on Monad internally that you're aware of, and you want to like just give them a shout out or like just talk about them?
Yeah, there's certainly. I'll start by saying Kizzy is a pretty cool one. They're a team that has been building for some time now, but they're doing like a social media betting platform, which I think will be really cool because it joins a lot of interests across social media that's already so prevalent within our lives, with a fun aspect of what makes crypto fun, like the degen kind of feel. So yeah.
Right. All right.